G'day and welcome to the very first episode of New England Today. My name is Richard Monk. I'm part of the New England Network. If you've read the New England Times, well, that's the sort of stuff we're doing here too. This is the video version of the New England Times. So you can watch us on YouTube or you can read us online. Today, for the very first episode, I'll be talking to the brand new MP for the Northern Tablelands, Brendan Moylan. Brendan Moylan, new member for the Northern Tablelands, New South Wales Legislative Assembly, Nationals member. You're looking forward to moving into the bear pit?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I think so.
How daunting is that actually, coming from a background of you're a Maori solicitor, so obviously you're not frightened of anything, but moving into that environment, how daunting is that at the moment?
I think what I've noticed over the last few weeks while I've been unofficially doing the job, I suppose, is that it's very similar to my old job. My old job was trying to help people and fix problems. Yeah. This job's really similar as well. It's trying to help people and fix problems. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if I can help as many people as I can, then I'm doing my job properly. So, of course, it is daunting in some respects, but really looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah. How much of a change is this for you though? Because you've got a family you've got to consider. You have a new position for what are we in New England? 100 or Northern Tablelands. You've got about 100,000 people roughly.
Yeah, 58,000 voters.
58,000 voters, but their families and all that. So it's a huge group of people. That's a lot to take on from going from single case to huge portfolio.
Absolutely. Essentially, I've gone from approximately 240 clients to over 100,000 clients in essence. But before COVID, I was doing around 110 nights a year travelling. And so that's obviously going to be vastly increased. And it's a big adjustment. So before I put my hand up for pre-selection, my wife and I, we sat down and we spoke about it. We spoke about all the pros and the cons. The cons are obviously time away from home and the travel. I don't mind the travel. The time away from home is probably the hardest part of the job. For example, I've coached my little boys' junior footy team for the last 3 or 4 years, and I've had to give that up, which was really sad. It was really sad to give that job up, because I've coached those guys since and girls since the under sixes, and they couldn't even catch a ball, and now they're a really good close knit little sporting team, and so that's difficult. But as Catherine, my wife, said when we were talking about whether I would put my hand up for pre-selection, it's probably a once in a lifetime opportunity to actually put your hand up, put yourself out in front of the communities where I've grown up, and try and fix people's problems and try and help people. And I think I would have regretted it for the rest of my life if I hadn't put my hand up and had a go.
So this wasn't out of the blue then for you. There was some sort of focus on doing this. I'm not saying you were creating a political career path, but it wasn't out of the blue. It wasn't like the party just said to you, Brendan, you can be the next member, or
it was in some respects out of the blue. So Adam, when he announced his resignation, like everyone else, I was quite shocked because Adam has done such a great job for the electorate. I certainly didn't expect him to announce that he was going to resign. And so that came out of the blue. And then we had a period of time where the party then had to organise a pre-selection. So we had a period of time from Adam's resignation to nominations. We had a few weeks to have a think about it. So up until that point, it did come out of the blue. And then Catherine and I had to think very carefully about it. I had to talk to my business partners as well, which was a very difficult conversation because we've been in business out there for many, many years. And the people I work with have become some of my closest friends. Our kids have grown up, for example, together with a few of my business partners. And so there was some difficult discussions, but at the end of the day, this really is a once in a lifetime chance to do some good and to actually help people. And that's the best part of my old job was helping people and when you had a win. and I'm hopeful that we can have a few wins in this job as well.
But, all right, let's talk about some of those. What are the big issues that, in your mind, let's just bring it to three.
The three main issues, I think, are cost of living, healthcare in the hospitals, and law and order. And so when we look at, if we focus on cost of living first, state government has a role to play in cost of living pressures. And so our electorate has been really well served over the last few years by government money, because to a certain extent, in the regions, we can tend to be forgotten about. And Adam was very effective when my side of politics was in government. Adam was very effective in getting that money out to the regions. One of the really frustrating aspects of this job that I've learned over the last few weeks is all of those funding opportunities and all of those regionally specific grants, that money's gone. And so when we look at, for example, the Building Stronger Country Communities Fund, which went into constructing and renovating community infrastructure like community halls, pony clubs, showgrounds, show trusts, etc. That money's gone. So that fund has been completely axed by the state government. There was another great fund that our electorate did really well out of, and that was the royalties to the regions fund. And so what the previous government did, it looked at the mining across the state and said, well, we need to invest some of the royalties from that mining back into regional New South Wales. That fund's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And so there is literally hundreds of millions of dollars that previously was coming to our electorate that no longer is coming. And it's not a situation where that money no longer exists. It's been rediverted. And so government has a role to play. And my role in relation to cost of living is to go down to Macquarie Street and actually fight and try and get some money back into our electorate. Law and order, crime, there's so many things we can do there, but in my previous life as a solicitor, what I noticed is that the very best form of deterrence in a small country community is to have a magistrate that reflects community expectations in terms of sentencing. The police are very well funded, the cops do a good job. I've gotten to know a few of the highway patrol officers recently, so they're not my favourite people. But the general duties police do a great job. But one of the frustrations, I think, for the community is where the police go out, they'll apprehend people alleged to have committed serious offences, and I'm not talking minor offences, I'm talking serious break and enter, aggravated B&Es, where people are terrified in their own homes, and then the court will not actually take the step to reflect community sentencing expectations. And so there's obviously the separation between government and the judiciary, but I think as the role of local member, my role there is to champion strong magistrates, experienced magistrates who can come in and actually reflect community expectations. And that's something that I'm working on already in that regard.
That's your strength because that's your background too, isn't it? So that's likelihood of you being able to make some real impact there is pretty high.
I hope so.
Because it's what you do. It's a passion.
I hope so. And I don't want to be one of these politicians that just goes out and slags off against the judiciary. But what I do want to work with the Attorney General and with the government is to actually have magistrates who want to be here. Yeah. And that's the difference. If we can attract decent, experienced magistrates who want to be here, then I think the community will start seeing better sentencing outcomes. And then healthcare, obviously in our hospitals, is a huge, huge issue. And what I have learnt over the last few weeks is it's not only the healthcare in the hospitals, it's actually getting people to the hospital. So in the last 12 months alone, in regional New South Wales, there was around 12,000 patient transfers undertaken by ambulance drivers. And so we're using our ambos who are highly skilled, highly trained. We're using our ambos to actually be glorified taxi drivers between Inverell, Armidale, Glen Ennis, Armidale. And so an example last week, a gentleman was at the service club at Glen Ennis. He collapsed. An ambulance was called. The ambos were on patient transfer duties. And so they used the service, the transfer bus, the courtesy bus at service, to run him into the hospital. And lucky they did because he'd had a stroke. And so they were able to get the medication in and reduce that swelling. If that chap had been at home and had waited for an ambulance, his outcome would have been a hell of a lot worse than what it is. And so we have to look at patient transfer vehicles. Now, I think in the Northern Tablelands at the moment we have 3, and what I'm starting to look into is actually whether we're using those 3 as well as what we could, and secondly, if we are using those 3 vehicles as well as what we could, do we need more? And I think the answer is probably yes. And then I need to go down to Macquarie Street and try and work very hard to get those additional vehicles. Staffing in our hospitals as well is a huge issue. My little girl had an ear infection a few weeks ago. There was all gunk coming out of her ear. We couldn't get in to see the GP. We didn't expect to. And so we went off and sat at emergency at Moree for a long time. And that's just a reflection of the staffing issues that we have.
She okay?
Yeah, she's fine now. So we eventually got there. Doctors were great. The doc had a look at it and put her on some antibiotics, and 3-4 days later they kicked in and she's good now. But it's just so incredibly frustrating sitting in emergency for 3/4 of a day. My wife works. She's a teacher, so she had to go to school. I had a million things to do as well. So I had to cancel meetings and put meetings back, which understandably upsets people because they've put time aside to see me. And yet I'm sitting in emergency with Millie with gunk coming out of her ear. So it's really frustrating. And I think the Armidale urgent care model, for example, is such a fantastic idea. It really is a great idea. If we can get that working, then people with those minor ailments like Millie Moylan's ear infection, for example, you can't get into your GP, which none of us can seem to get into a GP. And instead of sitting for half a day at emergency, you go down to the urgent care clinic and you can get through and hopefully get your script for your antibiotics and you're on your way. The problem obviously we've got there is that the model disappointingly is already failing because of staffing pressures. And that's not a reflection on our registered nurses. It's not a reflection on our doctors. The fact of the matter is that we need more medical professionals in our healthcare system. And I think we need to start looking at, do we need to grow our own better than what we are? We've got lots and lots of really intelligent, bright kids in the Northern Tablelands. We've got a world-class university right here in Armidale, and so there has to be a way that we can try and integrate those aspects of our community better.
That is a big ask, though. This has been an issue for a long time, though. The idea, Australia-wide, is having health professionals at hand. We've obviously gone down the line of trying to import people, and there was a stage where we had locums from Scotland, which was beyond my understanding, but it was that sort of thing is happening. Clearly, yes, we do have intelligent people here and we do have potential people, but they want other things.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you introduce young people to the business to begin with health. Also, new GPs. Urella's just lost their GP.
Yeah.
This whole sort of draw card is not there at the moment. How, in your mind, can you...
So if we look at GPs, for example, so GPs are a federal government responsibility, and it's difficult for people to understand the differing roles between state government and federal government in Australia. But if we talk about GPs for a moment, I think we have to start thinking outside of the box. And in my experience, focusing on my little business at Moree that I've just left, the way we could attract young, decent solicitors to Moree, which can be a hard town to attract professional staff to, was money. And if you can pay these kids well enough, they will come and they'll give it a go. And if they give it a go, 9 times out of 10, they love it and they stay. And so if we look at GPs, there's got to be so many aspects that the federal government could be looking at. Tax incentives for regional GPs, HEX assistance or help assistance as it's now called. So there's a lot of things that we can do. I'm really excited about the direction of the university is taking. I think we've got a fantastic Vice-Chancellor there, and I think there's some really exciting things that are underway in this space already. And so everyone wants the same outcome. Everyone in our communities wants better healthcare outcomes in our hospitals. Everyone in our community wants less patient transfers being performed by ambulance drivers. We're all on the same page. We just have to work together to get to that outcome. But it's not just healthcare professionals either. The police are so drastically understaffed as well. And so it's healthcare professionals, it's police, it's fireys, as for example, Bingara. We need more retained fireys at Bingara to maintain that station. It's accountants, it's teachers, it's solicitors, it's absolutely everyone that we need to attract to the regions. And the role of state government in attracting people to the regions is to make the regions as attractive as possible.
Is there a way to be able to influence federal? I know there's a legal thing there, but it is about networking. It is about change.
It's a difficult question because obviously in our system of government that we have in Australia, we're so regimented in the separation between each tier of government. But I think it's about talking to people. To be honest with you, it's my idea of politics, and look, this could be an entirely naive view because I am not from a political background. I grew up on a farm. Politics was spoken about like it is in every country household, but no one in my family is a politician. I'm the first one, much to my brother and sister's amusement. But my approach to politics, I think, you can stand there and you can throw mud from opposition, for example. So if I go down to Macquarie Street and I stand up in the Legislative Assembly and carry on like an absolute pork chop, I'm not going to get anything done. The government's going to look at me and say, that's the little idiot from Armidale and Moree, don't worry about him, he's a clown. Where if I sit there and I actually listen to both sides of the argument, I try and contribute and I try and build some networks, not only in my own side of politics, but also on the opposite side of politics, then I think I'm going to be able to achieve more with that approach as opposed to just throwing mud from the backbenches, which is where I am. Now, look, that may be a very naive approach, but that's how I've approached my professional life so far, and that's how I want to approach politics, is actually looking at trying to achieve an outcome as opposed to the process. It's the outcome that we have to obtain. It's the outcome we need to get to. The process, I think some politicians get too caught up in the process. They enjoy the grandstanding, they enjoy the slinging of mud, they enjoy the theatrics of question time, whether it's theatrics or ridiculousness, take your pick. But it's the outcome that we have to achieve. And that's why I'm here. I'm not here to carry on like a clown in question time.
That's really positive. And there's a kind of a behaviour that everyone gets into once they're in their orb, once they're in their bubble, that they continue to keep wanting to improve just that bubble. And politics has got it, media has it, you name it. People just get caught in their thing.
Yeah.
You're fresh into this, and I'm sure there are other politicians you'll be running into who've got very similar views to you. But there is an underswell. It's changing, and last federal election is proof of what happened there. It still comes down to there is an underswell with people saying, why aren't we getting anything done? We can't afford our houses, we can't afford food, health, everything you've tapped on, which you've got a fresh mind and you're going to go in there and you've got the wherefore to be able to push that through and do it without being, as you said yourself, you're not going to stand up like a clown, you're actually going to use the system to work. But do you now have to set a timeline to say that I'll be able to achieve these things, to be able to tell the people who voted for you that you've been successful?
Well, if I don't have any success in 2.5 years, I'll get turfed out.
It's pretty cold.
That's the reality. I mean, every election's a performance review, and my next performance review is 2.5 years' time. And so, if if I go down to Macquarie Street, sit on the backbenches, don't achieve anything, 2.5 year time, I'll get turfed out. That's the reality of it. So I've got 2.5 years to prove my worth to our community.
Not a long time, is it?
No.
That's only half a year.
And that's
half a term.
And that's why I'm not sworn in yet. And so the day after the election, I had breakfast with my wife and the kids. They went back to Moree and I stayed here, and we started work straight away. I've already been on the phone to not only my own side of politics, but I've had discussions with ministers about issues that are important to our communities here. So I've only got 2.5 years to do this, and if our community is not happy with me, they'll turf me.
All right, on a lighter note and a more positive note, what's your dream portfolio? So here you are, you've got to through your 2.5, you're suddenly on the front bench.
I can't see that happening, but go on.
Well, you never know what happens in the world. What's that portfolio?
I actually haven't thought about that. Dream portfolio.
You don't have to answer it if you don't want.
No, look, I'd probably go ag. I know I'm a solicitor, but I did grow up on a farm. While I was at uni here, I worked at the Newey as a glassy, but I also worked on farms, and I've still maintained that connection. All of my clients, the vast majority of my clients, were farmers, and particularly in Moree, when the ag sector is doing well, the whole town is doing well. And so if I had a dream portfolio, it would probably be ag, but the reality is that's, I could do this job for 10 years and I may never get that opportunity to do that. So to be honest, that's the first time I've thought about it. I can't see, so if my side of politics gets back into government, I just can't see the Liberal Party making the Attorney General. I just can't see that happening. So, and I can't see a solicitor from Moree being Attorney General either.
Well, there are surprises for all of us, I think. Is there any statement you'd like to leave us with, being on this side of actually getting into the job proper?
Yeah.
So a statement that you could sort of give us that would tell us about how you want to work, how quickly you want to work, and what your real focus is.
Yeah. Well, I suppose how I want to work is I want to work as an accessible member. I can't do the job as the local member unless our communities are talking to me, and I want to be accessible. The electorate office in Armidale is not moving. The electorate office in Moree is not moving. I'm also in discussions with the Parliament at the moment to start a satellite office in Inverell, which hopefully we can get up and running in the coming weeks. And so that will give the communities of Inverell and the surrounding districts a few days a week where, for example, if an elder member of the community doesn't use email, he or she can actually drop into that office in Inverell and raise those concerns. So I want to be accessible, and I suppose to our community of Northern Tablelands, judge me on my work ethic.
Very honest. Thank you very much, Brendan.
Fine. Thanks, Richard.
Well, that's Brendan Moylan. Now, if you'd like to see more interviews like that, make sure you subscribe to this channel. And if you'd like to read more, check out the New England Times if you haven't already. But don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you here again shortly.